right now for our projected revenues is at 158.7 million. General fund expenditures are at 160.7 million, thus resulting in a new projected year-end deficit of approximately 2 million rounded at the end of the fiscal year. The year-end estimated for revenues is based on the anticipation of higher revenues in UUT, TOT, sales tax, motor vehicle in lieu, card club, and non-residential construction revenues, which I will speak on in detail in the next few slides. The year-end projections for expenditures is based on the anticipation of lower expenditures due to vacant positions not being filled within the year, less CIP activity than initially planned for the general fund by the end of the year, and remaining work to be completed on continued contracts that have the potential of rolling over certain balances for fiscal year 23. But in that, the mayor has great concern now that we see that we have been too ambitious with our obligations, that we are going to, in addition to our year-end estimate, we are going to also go back and review our current obligations for our carryovers to make a few more adjustments in the respect of reducing some of the obligations on a budget basis until the work is to be identified and or complete, and then payment can be made at such time.
Let me interject here just for a moment, if you don't mind, Ms. Buchanan. So, put this in plain English. Basically, this city has been engaged in a vigorous infrastructure renewal program for at least the last 7 to 8 years. Is that right, Eli? All right, 7 to 8 years. And so basically we took a city that had roads, sidewalks, due for renewal reconstruction for the last 30 years, and we're playing catch up real fast. And so we admire our public works department, admire our planning department for the reviews that they do so that development can occur in the city. However, what's happened in this rush to catch up is that we have budgeted amounts of money for projects that history has shown us don't usually get completed within the fiscal year. And so this last fiscal year, we had about $14 million surplus that we put in the general fund. And then we came back with this same problem where we had these obligations, and it made it look like we don't have enough money to conduct our business. But that's not the case. The reality is that we have to stop doing what we've always done and stop budgeting so much for these big projects that usually aren't done within a fiscal year. Mr. Weinberg, am I explaining that correctly? Okay, and so...
And due to the fact they are multi-year contracts, so let's put that out there too.
Absolutely, and so we're budgeting the full amount in a fiscal year when we never expect it to be done in the fiscal year anyway. And so what my recommendation is going to be to the council is that basically we're going to look very hard, and we have done that already, at these contracts, cut the amount allocated in this year, and I'm going to make a recommendation that we move to allow the city manager, because the reason that we're given is that these projects are in progress and that it takes 2 weeks to get it on a council agenda, and then money ends up being due. So my recommendation is going to be that we give authorization to the city manager to encumber $500,000 at a time for a contract out of general fund reserves to prevent that doomsday scenario from happening, and that he will have to report back to the council within 2 weeks for the council's approval.
Mayor, and I don't have a problem supporting that. I'll second that if that's in terms of a motion. But I just want to add, just for clarification, that essentially we wouldn't be changing anything except kind of the snapshot that we're looking at. Because basically, you know, when thank you, Ms. Keone, when she described us as overambitious, she was talking about us, staff, everybody, because we're in a place in time in Inglewood where we could say, hey, we're going to do 50 sidewalks, we're going to do 1,000 streets, whatever. We can say that because we know we can make it happen. Of course, that started to become impossible just physically and getting it all done, although we had budgeted for that. So those are items that we had budgeted for that we're now saying, hey, you know what, we get it. It doesn't make us look like we have enough money for what we meant to do. So we're gonna be a little more realistic in what we actually clarify on paper, right?
To back that up, the reality is that we have the money in the general fund reserves. If we were able to
reach
accomplish that physically, we do have the money to do it. But what it does, we end up giving reports that look skewed because it looks like we had projected a $22 million deficit. Well, people aren't told that includes capital projects that are multi-year projects that aren't likely to be completed.
That's the point, you know, I'm right there with you that really, you know, we're there's a lot of folks that would take this and misconstrue what we're doing here, when in fact what we're doing is we're actually being extremely responsible, saying, hey, we might get to that this year. We are hoping to get to that this year. But now that we see that, you know, we want to be very clear as to where we are. Instead of more clear snapshot, what the mayor is saying is he's saying, hey, let's do away with those maybes. Let's start talking about what we're doing, and just so that we don't slow anything down, I believe he made a motion to say authority to the city manager for a specific amount to say, hey, and just so we don't slow anything down, if we do get to those things, we'll give this authority.
So is that a motion?
That was the motion.
And I
that
second
the
it.
manager be given authority of up to $500,000 for a contract that has already been signed by the mayor if it falls short of funding
And not yet funded.
in the fiscal year. And that he will have to report back to the council within 2 weeks.
To get it affirmed.
Second.
Okay, Madam City Clerk.
Council members Padilla,
Aye.
Morales,
Aye.
Falk,
Aye.
Mayor Butts,
Aye.